She stood up at my mother's birthday dinner, smiled at the whole table, and told everyone that the business idea everyone had been praising all evening was hers, not mine. Hers. She looked me dead in the eye when she said it and smiled wider, like she was daring me to correct her in front of my parents, my aunts, my cousins, my grandmother who was visiting for the first time in 3 years. I picked up my fork. I took a bite of my food. I said nothing, because I had already decided the idea was the least of what I was going to build. My name is Zara, 29 years old, the younger sister. Always the younger sister. Not just in age, in everything. In the way families assign roles without holding a vote. In the way those roles become invisible architecture that shapes every room you walk into together. My sister Priya is 5 years older, brilliant in the traditional way, the way that produces good grades and impressive titles, and the specific confidence of someone who has been told since childhood that she is exceptional. She has a master's degree. She has a title at a consulting firm that takes 30 seconds to explain and sounds important the entire time. She has the ability to walk into any room and immediately become the most credible person in it. And she has always, I mean always, had a problem with me. Not openly, not in the way that produces confrontations and cleared air and resolved tension. In the quiet way, the undermining way, the way that is so subtle and so consistent that it takes years to name. When I got into a good college, she told our parents the acceptance was probably a mistake. When I started my first job, she told our relatives I was still figuring things out. When I dated someone, she found reasons to mention his flaws in family conversations when I wasn't in the room. Not because she was cruel, because I was the younger sister. And in Priya's internal world, the younger sister did not get to have things first, or better, or more. I had spent 29 years navigating this, mostly by building quietly, mostly by doing my work in rooms she wasn't in, mostly by letting the results speak when I wasn't ready to. And then, one evening, at my mother's birthday dinner, she took the one thing I had been quietly building for 8 months and claimed it as her own. The idea had started the way real ideas start, not with a light bulb moment, with a problem I kept running into personally. I worked in content creation, freelance, building my client base slowly. I had been noticing for 2 years that small South Asian-owned businesses in our city had almost no digital presence, not because they didn't want one, because the tools available were built for a different customer, different aesthetic language, different cultural context, different storytelling needs. I had been developing a framework, a content and branding service specifically designed for South Asian small businesses. 8 months of research, client interviews, market analysis, a business plan I had been refining every weekend for 2 months. I had made the mistake of sharing it with Priya 4 months before the birthday dinner, over the phone, late at night. The way you share things with family when you're excited and you need to think out loud, and you trust the person on the other end because they are your sister and you have known them your whole life. She had asked good questions, engaged ones, the kind that made me feel seen and understood, and that I now understood were also the kind that extracted detailed information from someone who was giving it freely. She asked about the target market, the service structure, the pricing model, the specific gap I had identified. I told her everything because she was my sister, because I trusted her, because I had not yet learned the specific lesson that some people teach you only once. The dinner was 3 weeks after that call, my mother's birthday, the whole family together, and somewhere between the main course and dessert, someone asked Priya about her work, and Priya said she had actually been developing something new, something exciting, a content and branding service for South Asian small businesses. She described it in my words, my framework, my market research, my pricing model, my idea, in my family's dining room, at my mother's birthday dinner, with me sitting 4 seats away. The table responded exactly the way she knew it would. Our father leaned forward, interested, impressed, asking follow-up questions. Our mother said it sounded brilliant. Our aunts nodded with the specific approval they reserved for Priya's accomplishments. Our grandmother said she had always known Priya had a sharp business mind. And Priya talked for 12 minutes about my idea, in my words, with my 8 months of work behind every sentence. And I sat there, fork in hand, listening to my own thinking described back to me as my sister's vision. She looked at me twice during those 12 minutes, just twice. And both times she held my gaze for exactly 1 second, long enough to make sure I understood she knew exactly what she was doing, not long enough to give anyone else at the table a reason to look between us. It was precise. It was practiced. It was the most sophisticated act of theft I had ever witnessed, and it was wrapped so completely in warmth and family and celebration that nobody at that table would have believed me if I had said, "That's mine." So I didn't say it. I picked up my fork, I took a bite of my food, and I smiled when my mother caught my eye. And inside, something that had been quietly building for 29 years finally found its direction. I drove home alone after the dinner, put on no music, just drove, and let myself feel the full weight of what had happened. Not just the dinner, the full weight. 29 years of the younger sister role, the college acceptance that was probably a mistake, the job where I was still figuring things out, the relationship where his flaws were discussed without me, the late-night phone call where I gave 8 months of my thinking to someone who used it as performance material at a family dinner. I felt it all. The specific grief of being betrayed by someone you share blood with, the particular loneliness of sitting in a room full of family and being completely unseen, the exhaustion of a pattern so old it had stopped feeling like a pattern and started feeling like the truth. I got home. I sat at my kitchen table, I opened my laptop, I looked at the business plan, 8 months of work, my market research, my client interviews, my framework, my pricing model, my words. Now also Priya's dinner party story. I sat with it for a long time, and then something shifted, not broke, shifted. The way something shifts when you finally stop waiting for a situation to change itself and decide to change it. I closed the business plan document, I opened a new one, and I started writing. Not a confrontation, not a family group chat message, not a phone call to Priya. A business plan. Version 2. Better than version 1, because version 1 had been built in theory. Version 2 was going to be built in reality, starting immediately, starting tonight. Here is what I understood sitting at that kitchen table that I had not fully understood before. Priya had taken my idea, but she had not taken my capability. She had not taken my 8 months of actual research. She had not taken my relationships with the potential clients I had already been building quietly. She had not taken my understanding of the market that was so specific and so detailed that she could describe it at a dinner table but could not execute it in the real world. She had a story. I had a foundation, and a foundation beats a story every time. Every single time. I made 3 decisions that night. Decision 1, I was going to launch. Not someday, not when I felt ready, now, the next 30 days. Decision 2, I was going to document everything. Every piece of original research, every dated file, every email thread with potential clients, every version history of the business plan. If this ever became a conversation, I was going to have the receipts. Decision 3, I was not going to tell Priya. Not because I was afraid of her, because I understood something she didn't. The best response to someone stealing your idea is to build it so well and so fast that the original claim becomes irrelevant. I called my friend Amara at 11 p.m. She was already asleep. She picked up anyway. I need help, I said, and I need to move fast. Tell me everything, she said. I told her. When I finished, she said, Zara, you have the research, you have the relationships, you have the plan. What are you waiting for? Nothing, I said. Good, she said. Start tomorrow. I started that night. 28 days after my mother's birthday dinner, Zara & Co. launched. Not a soft launch, a real one. With a website that reflected the aesthetic language of the market I had spent 8 months researching. With 3 anchor clients I had been in conversation with for months who signed on within the first week. With a content strategy that spoke directly to South Asian small business owners in the specific cultural and visual language that the existing tools had missed. With my name on every single piece of it. The response was immediate and significant. Within 2 weeks, I had been featured in a local business publication focused on minority-owned enterprises. Within 6 weeks, I had 9 clients. Within 3 months, I had a wait list. Within 6 months, the revenue number had crossed something I was not ready to say out loud, but that my accountant said out loud for me on a Tuesday morning, and that I had to ask her to repeat. Because I wanted to hear it twice. The family found out gradually, the way things find out in families. Someone sees something, mentions it to someone else, it moves through group chats and side conversations, and eventually arrives everywhere. My father called me. He had seen the feature publication. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Zara, is this the same idea that Priya was talking about at your mother's birthday? I said, it's the idea I developed for 8 months before that dinner, yes. Silence. A long one. I see, he said. I know, I said. Priya called me 4 days later. Her voice had the specific quality of someone who has spent 4 days preparing a conversation and is still not quite ready for it. I saw the feature, she said. I know, I said. You launched, she said. I did, I said. Zara. Priya, I said. I'm not calling it what it was on this phone call. I'm just going to say that I have every dated document, every version, every client email, everything. So if this ever needs to be a different kind of conversation, I'm ready for that too. Silence. It doesn't need to be, she said quietly. Good, I said. I'm sorry, she said. 2 words. Quiet. No performance in them. Just 2 words that cost her something to say. I sat with them for a moment. I know, I said. Is it doing well? She said. Yes, I said. Good, she said. And she meant it. I think she actually meant it. That was the most surprising part. Zara & Co. is 14 months old. The waitlist is real. The revenue number that my accountant said out loud on a Tuesday morning has grown since then in ways that I am still adjusting to. I've hired 2 people, both South Asian women, both younger sisters, neither of them the kind of person who was ever going to be handed anything. Both of them exactly the kind of person who was going to build it anyway. Priya and I are in a different place now, not repaired, reconstructed from different materials than before, more honest ones. She came to the 1-year anniversary dinner I threw for the business. She sat at the table, she looked at everything I had built, and at the end of the evening, she said, "You did it right." I looked at her. "I know," I said. She laughed, a small surprised one, the kind that happens when someone says something true and you weren't ready for how true it was going to be. I thought about the birthday dinner, the 12 minutes, the 2 looks across the table, the fork in my hand, and I thought, she took my idea. She did not take my capability. She did not take my research. She did not take my relationships. She did not take my 8 months of work. She did not take my name. She took a story she could tell at a dinner table. I built the thing the story was about, and it turned out the thing was worth considerably more than the story ever was.